Hi everyone, I'm Celine from Blue Cala Patterns and welcome to the video series for the Lupin laptop bag. This is a larger bag, which means that obviously there will be a lot of components to the bag and it is definitely a longer sew. It is not overly difficult, but you would want to have um, at least intermediate bag making skills before you attempt it. If you're a beginner and you want to watch through the entire videos and you want to try it, absolutely. I encourage everyone to try it, but it is a longer project. So if you're not a fan of making longer projects, if you just like quick sews, this is probably not the project for you. So, like all of my video series, I usually start with the basics. So I go over the parts of the bag with you, and I go through the cutting chart. I show you all of the pieces you need to cut, and then if there's any special interfacing requirements, we'll go through that. So I'm going to go very slowly because the bag does have several parts. And hopefully, by going slowly, you'll be able to understand and keep track of all the different parts you're going to need to make the bag. So, like every pattern, please read the instructions. Read even the parts that you think are not important. I do see a lot of skimming through very important sections like the pattern pieces section. I know you probably think, oh, it's just the same as every other pattern. I don't need to read it. Please read it because a lot of errors that I'm seeing are from skimming or skipping certain sections of the pattern, thinking they're not as important as the others. So one thing that I've changed in this pattern, because I think a lot of people are skimming the pattern pieces section. So this section is important because I do highly recommend that you print out your pattern in Adobe Reader. And with your scaling, I don't want you to print at 100%. I want you to print at actual size because there is an issue with certain computers or devices not communicating properly with the printer. And when you say 100%, some printers kind of interpret that differently than the actual size it's supposed to be. So please print using Adobe Reader, preferably on a desktop. I find iPads and smartphones not very reliable for accurate printing. And make sure that your scaling is set to actual size, not 100%. And then I also give instructions here on which pieces, pattern pieces, will need to be taped together. So I did print those out. Now, once you've finished printing the pattern, you'll see at the end are the pattern pieces. So there aren't very many pieces to this pattern. You are mostly cutting to measurements, which are in the cutting chart in the pattern. We're going to be going through that in a few minutes. So you have your main body pattern piece. That's these 4 pieces. And I'm going to show you that taped together. Now, the one change that I've made is for this line, I have given you a measurement. So you use your ruler and measure this dashed line. It has a flower symbol, and this needs to measure 8 3/8 of an inch. If that is not the measurement you're getting when you measure this line, it's printed incorrectly. The 1-inch squares are not always accurate. So please make sure before you cut anything, before you continue, please measure this line. Make sure that it measures 8 3/8 of an inch before you start anything at all. If this doesn't measure, if it measures smaller, that means you did not print it correctly. So try to get it either printed at a print shop if you don't have a desktop computer. But if you have a desktop computer, download Adobe Reader and try printing again at actual size. And then the other pattern pieces are, oh, I have 2 copies of this one. So you have the tab closure piece, your exterior zipper facing piece, and then again the main body piece. So that main body piece, you have 4 pieces you need to tape together. So I'll show you what that looks like once it's taped together. It's a very large piece. So this is what it looks like. Now this is my very first copy, so it has changed a little bit in the final version, but I don't like to waste paper, so I didn't print it out again. The dimensions have not changed. So you'll see that there's a few different lines here. So instead of having you print and retape several pattern pieces that use the same basic shape, I'm trying to be a little bit smarter with paper use. And so you're actually going to cut 3 different things with the same pattern piece. When I tape the pieces together, so you're just butting all of those dashed lines together and you're going to have matching symbols. So because this was my very first copy, I'm missing the matching symbols here, but they will be on your version. When I tape together, I actually only cut at the dashed line on certain pieces and the rest I don't. And I have them overlapping and it just makes the pattern piece stronger. If you cut all the pieces right at the dashed lines and just butt them and tape them, I find that with use, especially if you fold them to put them away, the tape cracks and gives way, and then all of a sudden your pattern pieces are all in different pieces. So this is what I do with my pattern piece. So this is the main pattern piece you're going to use to cut a huge portion of the pieces for this bag. And then you're also going to have the tab closure piece and the exterior zipper pocket facing piece, but those are fairly straightforward. I really wanted to just talk about this piece. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to use the cutting chart that's found on page 3. So you see I've already checked off items as I was cutting them. We're going to go through this list. These are all the pieces that we need to cut. And these are the different materials we're going to be using. So you're going to have an exterior fabric. And just so it's clear in the video, so my exterior fabric, so this blue floral in my sample bag, I will be using, it's this beautiful cotton linen canvas. So this will be my exterior fabric. And then a contrast fabric. So you can actually use cork, vinyl, or cotton fabric again for this one. In this bag, I used this metallic gold vinyl, but for the bag that I'm making in the video, my contrast fabric will be this cork. It's a natural cork. Now for the lining fabric, in my sample bag, I used a canvas print. So this yellow, so I did used a combination. I did use some of my exterior fabric for the laptop pocket inside, and I used this yellow canvas. So I'm going to go through, when I'm cutting and going through the different pieces, I will explain what the different pockets are. So in this video, I will be using a combination of 2 different lining fabrics. So I'll be using this kaleidoscope plaid, and then I'm also using this blue and green floral for some of the pockets. So those are what I'm going to be using in this video. Now, other than fabric, you're going to need a few other things. So you're going to need your interfacings. I'm using fusible woven interfacing. That's going to be going on most of the pieces you see here. Foam interfacing, so this will give the bag its structure. A little bit of fusible fleece, actually just a tiny little amount, which we're going to be using in our tab closure. There's the fleece. And then webbing. So there's a lot of strapping in this bag, and obviously we could make our own, but because this is such a long sew, I wanted to give everyone a little bit of a shortcut, and there's so many wonderful webbings available to purchase now. I'm using a natural cotton. I've used it in this sample bag, and I'm going to use it in the video bag. So I'm using this same one in this video. It's a 1.5 inch wide webbing, and you don't have to use cotton webbing. You can use, I think they come in nylon, polypropylene. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, they're very, I actually seatbelt webbing is a good one too. So you can use whatever webbing you're able to find, as long as it's 1.5 inches wide and it's not too thick, because we are going to be folding it here. You can use whatever you find. And then a tiny little bit of firm sew and interfacing that we're just going to use to reinforce the bottom. So I did not put it in this sample bag, which is why it looks a little bit floppy. This was my very first attempt at making this bag, so it's missing a few things. But we are going to be adding a firm sew and interfacing into the bottom of the bag. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the different pieces, and I'm going to show you where it's located on this sample bag, just hopefully to make this a little bit more clear for you. And I'm also going to show you the pieces that I have cut. So hopefully this isn't confusing. I'm going to go very slowly because there are a lot of pieces to cut. So the first pieces that we're going to cut are the main body pieces. And for those, you're going to use this pattern piece, but you're going to use the entire piece. So there's no folding here. You're using the full piece. Where it's located on the sample bag. So if we open, so first, let me go through and actually show you all the different features of the bag. That will be a good start. So first, you have two large slip pockets on both sides of the exterior, and they close with a magnetic snap. In one of them, I sewed this very large zipper pocket, lots of room in there. Then inside the bag, you have your laptop pocket with a tab closure. So that this is padded with foam. And you have 3 large expandable pockets and another interior zippered pocket. I haven't sewn the bottom of this one, as you can see. It is just a sample. So this is what the main features of the bag are. Okay, going back to the main body pieces. Okay, so that's what you use the entire pattern piece to cut. You're going to be cutting 2 exteriors. So if you open up this pocket, there's one main body exterior, and on the other side, there's your second main body exterior piece. Okay, so 2 exterior. Then you're going to cut 2 lining pieces. So that's this big panel here that we have the expandable pocket and the interior zipper pocket sewn into. And then the second one, which if I open the laptop pocket, so it's this piece right here. Okay, so those are my 2 lining pieces. And I'm going to show them here. So for this video, these are my 2 exterior pieces. These are the fusible woven interfacing for those 2 pieces. Move this out of the way. These are my 2 lining pieces. So I'm using the plaid fabric for my lining, for the main lining. 2 fusible woven interfacing. And now I have 2 foam interfacing pieces, and those will be attached to the 2 exterior pieces. Okay, so I will set those aside. Now going back to this and our cutting chart. The next piece on this list is zipper panels. So the dimensions are listed here. I'm not going to mention them out loud, but the dimensions are underneath each item if they are to be cut to measurements. Your zipper panel pieces, here they are. So these are the pieces that you find along the zipper here. Okay, and you have, again, you have 2 exterior pieces, this one and this one, 2 lining pieces, this one and this one, and then your interfacing. So for the video, here they are, my 2 exterior pieces, and they're matching woven interfacing. Then my 2 lining pieces. So again, I'm using the plaid for the main lining pieces. And then there are 2 matching fusible woven interfacing. And then you'll notice under the cutting chart, you're also going to cut your foam, but your foam is going to be cut slightly narrower And the reason for that is because we're going to leave a gap on one side, along the side where we're going to be attaching the zipper. So it's a bit too bulky to include foam in that seam allowance, so we're going to trim it out. And I'm going to cover that and show you how I do it a little bit later on. So set these pieces aside. The next item on the list is our gusset. So on this bag, that's in the metallic gold fabric here. Okay, this entire piece, this is our gusset. For the bag in this video, I'm going to be using cork for the exterior. So here's my exterior gusset piece, and I cut a piece of matching foam. Now, one important thing to note here, I am using cork, so I'm not going to fuse the woven interfacing to the cork. So I put a little note here, if you're using cork or vinyl for your contrast, so for your gusset, you will not need to cut a piece of fusible woven interfacing for this. You'll only need to cut it for your lining piece. However, if you're making your exterior gusset in fabric, then you will need to cut two fusible woven interfacing. So I only have the one fusible woven interfacing for the lining. So again, using the plaid, matching fusible woven interfacing, one piece of foam, one piece of cork. If you're using fabric instead of cork or vinyl, you'll need an extra fusible woven interfacing. Okay, setting that aside. Now, the last thing you're going to need for the gusset is the firm sew-in interfacing. And for that piece, that's just beneath the gusset here on the list, gusset firm interfacing, I've given you the dimensions, and you'll want to use a firm sew-in interfacing. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of interfacing that could be used for the bottom of the bag. I think some like to use Decaville. I'm using Peltex 70. It's a firm sew-in interfacing. It's not a fusible. And I'm going to be gluing that to my foam gusset piece. That's something I'll be showing you a little bit later. Next on the list is your exterior zipper facing. So there's a few pieces we're going to need to install our zipper pocket. And we are going to need obviously a zipper. I'm going to talk about the hardware and the zippers right after I'm done the cutting list. So for that exterior zipper pocket, you're going to need, I'm just going to get my pieces here. So you're going to need a zipper facing piece. And what that does is it allows you to create this shape without the zipper. So the zipper tape is hidden inside your pocket. So it gives a more professional finish inside your pocket. So you'll need the one exterior zipper facing piece, which you are cutting using the provided pattern piece. So this piece here, which you'll have taped together, that's your exterior zipper facing pattern piece. I also gave you the measurements, but I'm using a pattern piece because we're going to need the cutout on this pattern piece to create the shape. You'll see that later. For now, just use the pattern piece and cut out one exterior fabric, one fusible woven interfacing. So that's it for the exterior zipper facing. For your exterior zipper pocket, you're going to need some lining pieces. And these are cut to measurements. Okay, so these are the pieces. If I open this pocket, this piece and this piece. So the both sides of the interior. So these are lining fabric pieces. I'm going to be using this green and blue floral. And for each piece, I also have a piece of matching fusible woven interfacing. So that's it. That's all you're going to need for the exterior zipper pocket. Next is the exterior pocket band. So that's what the piece that you see here and the piece that you see here. And it's actually one piece that's folded over into towards the lining. Okay, so it's not two separate pieces. This is one extra tall piece that we're going to end up folding. And I'm using cork for these. So here on this bag, I'm using the metallic gold vinyl. But for this video, I'm going to be using these two cork pieces. So I'm using cork. I don't need the fusible woven interfacing, but if you decide to use fabric for these, make sure that you cut 2 pieces of matching fusible woven interfacing. Now for our exterior pockets. So I've got those a little bit down on the list. So I'm going to skip down because I want to finish all of the exterior pieces that we're going to need. So if we go down the list to where you see exterior slip pocket. So these are our exterior slip pockets. Pocket number 1 on this side, and then pocket number 2 on this side, but this one has the exterior zipper pocket installed. Okay, so for those pieces, so you have exterior piece, lining piece, exterior piece, and lining piece. So those we're using the pattern piece to cut. This one here. And then you'll see right here, there's a dash line that has longer dashes, and here's like a dotted line. So we're folding the pattern piece where it says exterior slip pocket line. You're folding that pattern piece like this, and then you're using this portion to cut out those pieces that I just showed you. So I have here 2 exterior pieces with matching fusible woven interfacing and 2 lining pieces with matching fusible woven interfacing, and I'm using the plaid for the lining. So 2 exterior pieces, 2 lining pieces, and 4 pieces of fusible woven interfacing. Okay, so now we're going to go back to where we were in the list, and we're going to talk about our interior zipper pocket. So if we look inside the bag, this is our interior zipper pocket. And same as the exterior pocket, you're going to cut 1 zipper facing piece and then 2 lining pieces, this one and this one. And in this video, I'll be using the plaid. So here's my zipper facing piece. The measurements for these are all listed in the cutting chart. There's my zipper facing piece with matching fusible woven interfacing, and my 2 zipper pocket lining pieces with matching interfacing, and I'm going to be using this plaid for both. Okay, so for the laptop pocket, so this is the pocket here with the tab closure inside the bag. So this is my laptop pocket, and it will have an exterior piece. So really it's 2 lining pieces, but I used my exterior fabric in this one. And then another lining piece for the back. And inside will be some interfacing. So looking at the cutting chart, for your laptop pocket, you're going to again use the main body pattern piece. This time we're going to fold it on this laptop pocket line. So you fold this like so, and then you use this portion to cut those pocket pieces. And for that pocket piece, for the pocket pieces, these are not it. Where did I put them? Ah, there they are. Okay, here they are. So I've chosen to use the green and blue floral as the fabric that's going to be showing here. And then for the fabric inside the pocket, I'm going to be using the plaid. And each one has fusible woven interfacing, but don't fuse the woven interfacing to this exterior piece right away. We're actually going to add some padding with a piece of foam interfacing. So I'm going to show you how to do these a little bit later in this video. So you'll have 1 foam interfacing piece and then 2 lining pieces. I like to use contrasting lining pieces, and 2 fusible woven interfacing. Now you'll also need a tab closure for your laptop pocket. So I decided to use 2 lining pieces that I'm using the plaid fabric, 2 fusible woven interfacing, and 1 fusible fleece. I'll show you how to do this again at the end of this video because we're going to actually trim the seam allowance first on these pieces. And to cut the tab closure, you're using this pattern piece right here. Now, so we're going to skip the exterior slip pocket because we already covered that. The expandable pocket. This is this pocket here, and it has these pleats to make the pockets expand. So this is cut to measurements, which is provided in the cutting chart. And you're going to need to cut 2 lining fabric, but I do like to use contrasting fabric. So for this sample bag, I actually used my exterior fabric for the outside of the pocket and then a lining fabric for the inside. For this, in this video, the exterior fabric is going to be the blue and green floral, and then the inside is going to be the plaid fabric, and both of them have fusible woven interfacing. Now the strap connector, so that's one difference here on this sample bag. I had originally designed it with the strap connector coming out this seam. I really felt this wasn't going to be strong enough to hold the weight of a laptop. So now, and hopefully this won't be too confusing, but now we're actually going to create a connector that wraps all the way around the gusset and then folds in to hold these connectors. And we're going to sew this to the gusset. So I'll show you how we're going to do that a bit later in another video. But for now, just know that you need to cut the piece to the measurements provided on the chart. And if you're using fabric, you'll have to cut a piece of matching woven interfacing. Since I'm using cork, I'm not going to be adding any fusible woven interfacing. I'm just cutting a piece out of the cork with the measurements provided in the cutting chart. Now, for your adjustable strap, this is this strap here. You're using webbing, so you just cut it to, I cut mine to 58 inches long. I feel like this is a pretty decent length for this, this style of bag. And then for your handles, you're going to cut 2 pieces that are 40 inches long. Now, if you find the handles too long, you can always make them a little bit shorter if you like, but I wouldn't make them too much shorter. And then if you look inside here, inside of one of the pockets, I have them going all the way into the bottom seam here, and they're sewn all the way up here. And then I have some reinforcing stitches here because I really want these to be strong enough to hold the weight of a laptop. So you'll need 2 pieces that are 40 inches long. And then the last piece you'll need is what I call a strap casing. So when you're using webbing, you need to do something so the ends of the the ends of the webbing don't fray. The cotton especially really frays quite a lot. And I know that some people, what they'll do is they'll just fold it in over itself so that the cut end is encased. But I find that gets really thick and bulky. So what I've done is I've just created these little strap end casings out of fabric. And it's basically, if you've ever done a zipper end in fabric, it's the same idea. It's just that instead of putting the end of the zipper inside, we're going to be putting the end of our straps inside. Now, this is optional. If you want to do it a different way, you can absolutely do that. I know there are these metal clips that you can get that you clip onto the ends of your webbing, and that does basically the same thing. But this is a bit of a more cost-effective way of doing it, and it also looks sort of cute. So those are all the pieces that we need to cut. Now we're going to go over the notions and supplies we're going to need to make this bag. The first thing you're going to need are 18mm magnetic snaps. I'm using rose gold hardware for the exterior. I didn't have 18mm magnetic snaps in the same finish, so I'm just going to use antique brass. And you'll find those here, holding the exterior pockets shut. Okay, so 2 of those. Then you're going to need an interior zipper. So you can use a dress zipper like what I used in this sample bag. But I like using my zipper tape, so I'm going to use zipper tape for this one. If you're using a zipper, like zipper tape, like I am here, you're going to need 14 inches long of zipper tape. If you're using a pre-made dress zipper, you need a 12-inch zipper. The next thing you're going to need is a 14-inch zipper or 14 inches of zipper tape for the exterior zipper pocket. So this is the pocket that you see here on the exterior. I'm going to be using my zipper tape and it's 14 inches, but you also need a 14-inch zipper if you're using a pre-made zipper. And then the last zipper you're going to need is a 24-inch double pull zipper. That's the zipper you see here for the main closure of the bag. And I'm going to be using my zipper tape, of course. So 24 inches double pull zipper. If you can't find one that length specifically, or you're not using zipper tape, you could buy a longer zipper. I believe they come pretty commonly in a 30-inch length, and then you'll just have to trim it later on during assembly. That's really not a big deal if that's all you can find. And then it doesn't need a lot of hardware. All you need for this bag are two 1.5-inch rectangle rings. So these are going to be at the ends of your connector strap here, here and here. And you're going to need a 1.5-inch slide for your adjustable strap to make it adjustable. And then the other thing you're going to need, and I don't have it with me, is the Velcro. So you're just going to need a 3-inch length of Velcro or hook and loop tape. You're going to be using 3 inches on the tab itself, but on the pocket, you're going to trim the hook part to be only 2 inches and install that. But we're going to go over that again later on in the video. Now, the last thing you're going to need as well is a bottle of fray check, because even though I'm adding these fabric tabs to my webbing, I do like to be extra careful. I zigzag stitch the end, I apply fray check, then when that's dry, I add my little fabric casing. And then you're also going to need either some fabric glue or double-sided tape to attach the firm sew-in interfacing to your gusset foam piece, which I'm going to show you next. So the next thing we're going to do is start applying the interfacing to all of the pieces on our bag. So we're now going to move on to interfacing our pieces. For the most part, it's fairly simple. You fuse your woven interfacing to the wrong side of the matching pieces. But before we do that, let's go over some of the exceptions to this. So the first thing we're going to do is take all of our laptop pocket pieces. So you should have your 2 pieces of fusible woven interfacing and your 2 lining pieces. So like I mentioned previously, I'm going to have this as the back side of that laptop pocket, and this will be the front side. And then you should have a piece of foam interfacing. So for the back piece, it's straightforward. We're just going to fuse that woven interfacing to the wrong side. There is no wrong side to this fabric, so I'll just pick a side and then get fusing. So this is going to be on the inside of the pocket. It will not show on the outside when I look into the bag. I always like to fuse from the fabric side and then from the interfacing side, and that usually makes sure that it's properly fused. So put that aside and let it cool. Now for this front side, we're not going to fuse the woven interfacing to the wrong side right away. So first I'm just going to give this a press to make sure it's nice and flat and there's no wrinkles or creases. Okay, and then I'm just going to set this aside for a minute. And we're going to take the foam interfacing piece. Actually, I'm going to give this a little press because Sometimes when it's wrapped around the bolt, it'll have some creases. And I'm using Bosel, and I like it because I can actually just steam all the wrinkles out of it. Okay, so put this aside. So now what I want to do is I want to trim away the seam allowance all the way around the edges of this piece. And you can be really precise and measure exactly what the seam allowance is. We're actually going to do a little bit more than a seam allowance. We're going to do 1/2 inch. So for the straight edge, it's easy because I can just use my ruler and my rotary cutter to trim that away. Okay, so we're trimming away 1/2 inch from that top straight edge. And then we're going to do the same from the other side. And then I'm just going to kind of um, estimate and cut off at the corners. Just round them off just a tiny little bit. So first this side and then the other side. And then just round off those bottom corners a tiny bit. Doesn't have to be exact, just approximately will do. Okay. So now we're going to bring this back. And we're going to flip this so it is wrong side facing up. So this fabric, thankfully, has a very clear wrong side. Then we're going to place this on the wrong side, centered. So you want to make sure you have about 1/2 inch of space all the way around, like so. And then we're going to take our fusible woven interfacing, and we're actually going to use it to sort of hold that piece of foam in place. So make sure you have it properly centered. And it actually helps even if you cut the piece a little bit bigger than you need to, but it's not necessary. So what we're going to do is fuse this, and it's going to be fused to the foam, but at the edges here, we're going to make sure that we fuse it all the way around properly so that it holds that piece of foam in place on the wrong side. So start at the center and work your way out towards the edges. And then we're just going to go along the edges, and you kind of have to press down to make sure that your woven interfacing is fusing to your fabric. It's kind of helpful if we go like this, and then you use the edge here. Now, if you're worried that it's not going to hold it in place, you can also just do a quick basting stitch all the way around. So you're really sort of making sure you're getting that woven interfacing fused to that fabric on all along the edges. Okay, and then once it's fused all the way around, I kind of flip it and just make sure everything looks good on this side. Okay, and then that is ready for assembly. So we're just going to set aside those 2 laptop pocket pieces. For the next part, you're going to need your gusset firm interfacing, your gusset exterior piece. So again, I'm using cork, not fabric, and your gusset foam piece. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue this firm interfacing to our foam piece. And so you can either use double-sided tape or fabric glue. I'm going to be using Fabri-Tac. And before we do that, we're going to mark our centers. So we want to make sure that the firm interfacing is centered this way on our foam piece. So we are going to fold it in half and mark the center top and bottom. And then we're going to do the same for this piece. Okay, and now we're going to apply our glue to this firm interfacing piece. If you're using a fusible, you'll want to just fuse that on there with your iron. Okay, and so you're going to make sure that those center marks are aligned, but you also want to make sure that you're leaving ½ inch of space, top and bottom, between the edge of the firm interfacing and the edge of your foam. So there should be ½ inch of space here. Okay, and then you want to make sure that that's dry a little bit, but for the video, I'm just going to go ahead and move along. Now, before we attach the cork to the foam, we're going to just trim a little bit at the shorter ends. So these narrower ends of your foam, we're just going to take away about 3/8 of an inch on both sides. Okay, and then this piece is really large, so you're probably not seeing all of it on the video, but I'm just making sure that my foam is centered in a way where there's that gap at each end. Okay, and then use clips to hold it in place along those longer sides. And then I'm going to base this foam to the gusset using a zigzag stitch. If you only have a straight stitch machine, you can use a straight stitch, but I really like the zigzag stitch because it compresses the foam within the seam allowance at the same time as you're basting it on. Okay, so I'm not going to show this part, but so I'm going to leave these shorter ends alone, but these longer edges is where I'm going to do the basting with a zigzag stitch, and then this side as well. Okay, and then you'll be able to set that aside. The next thing you'll need are your zipper panel pieces. So you'll need your 2 exterior pieces, your 2 lining pieces, and the 4 pieces of fusible woven interfacing. And we're going to start by fusing the woven to the wrong side of all 4 pieces. Once you have the fusible woven interfacing fused to the wrong side of all these pieces, you're going to take your foam interfacing and your 2 exterior pieces. Now, if you remember in the cutting chart, your foam is 1/4 inch narrower than your exterior and your lining pieces. And the reason why is because we are going to leave a gap We're going to baste it to the wrong side, leaving a 1/4 inch gap along the longer edge that will be attached to the zipper. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to zigzag stitch along only one of the longer sides, but on both pieces. And those edges with that zigzag stitch are the ones that we're going to leave a gap, and we're going to have them attached to the zipper. And the reason we're doing a zigzag stitch is to compress the foam close to the zipper, and it'll just make it less bulky, and it will also look nicer. So I'm going to go ahead now and zigzag stitch one of the longer edges on both pieces. Okay, so I've zigzag stitched along one of the longer sides of both pieces. Now I'm noticing I was not very good at cutting my interfacing straight, so it's kind of sticking out here, but nothing that a quick trim can't fix. Okay, so now I'm going to place them like this, and then I'm going to have a look at my fabric because I can't remember if I think I don't think, yes, no, I did not fussy cut in any way. Okay, so now I'm going to place this piece like this and this piece like this, but I want to show you on the wrong side. And then I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to baste the foam to the exterior zipper panels with a zigzag stitch again. But I'm only going to do it along 3 sides, so the sides where there isn't a gap. So these 2 shorter sides here and this longer side here. And I'm going to do the same thing for both pieces. So one little tip I have is once you've basted foam to your pieces, sometimes what happens is they can kind of look a little bit wavy or puckered. If you give them a press once you've basted your foam to the wrong side, I find it kind of smooths it out and it looks a lot nicer. So that's just a little tip that I discovered. So once your foam is basted to your exterior zipper panels, you can just place all of the pieces aside for now. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our main body pieces. So if you remember, you have the 2 foam pieces, your 2 exterior pieces, your 2 lining pieces, and 4 pieces of fusible woven interfacing. So the lining pieces are straightforward. You're just going to fuse the interfacing to the wrong side. So I'm not going to show you that because that just makes the video become long and boring. And I'm just going to show you how to do one of the exterior panels, and then you're going to repeat the same thing for the second. So we're just going to fuse the woven interfacing to the wrong side of one of the pieces. And always start from the middle and work your way out. Now, I often get asked, what do I do if I'm using canvas that's a thicker canvas? Do I still need my woven interfacing? Depending on your machine and depending on the weight of the canvas. So, for example, if you're using a domestic machine and you're not really sure if it can handle layers and you're using 10-ounce canvas, for example, then I would omit the woven interfacing because I think your machine might have some problems, and a 10-ounce canvas is already probably thick enough and stable enough that it doesn't need the woven. I tend to always use woven just because my machine can handle the layers, and I just like to work with interfaced fabric as opposed to not interfaced. Okay, so once I have the woven interfacing, I'm just going to place this on top. And of course, I forgot my clips again. This is becoming a habit with me. So I will just use the alligator clips that I have here. Okay, so we're just going to clip this to the wrong side, and you're going to do exactly the same. You're going to baste the foam to the wrong side of the exterior piece. So this is your main body exterior piece, if I didn't mention it. You're going to baste all the way around with a zigzag stitch, 1/4 inch seam allowance approximately. And then you're going to do the same for the other main body exterior. You're going to fuse the woven interfacing and then baste that foam to the wrong side, exactly like we just did. And then for the two lining pieces, you're just going to fuse your woven to the wrong side and set that aside. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do that has a little bit of special interfacing instructions is the tab closure. There are possibly some special interfacing requirements for the exterior pocket bands if you're using fabric. So if I get my bag again, so that's these pieces here along the top edge of those exterior pockets. So if you're using fabric, and I forgot to mention this previously, if you're using fabric, you should fuse woven interfacing to the wrong side, but I also would like to add a little bit of fleece to those pieces. Now, as I mentioned, I am using cork, so I did not do any of that. And I'm trying to find my pieces. Here they are. So if you're using fabric for these two pieces, you're going to fuse your interfacing to the wrong side. Then your fusible fleece pieces, we want to make sure they're not too bulky. So you're going to trim the seam allowance from the fusible fleece pieces along the top and bottom longer edges. You're going to center them on the wrong side and fuse them over top of the woven interfacing on the wrong side. I'm using cork, I'm not adding woven, I'm not adding fleece, I'm just leaving them as they are. Okay, back to the tab closure. First, we're going to fuse our woven interfacing to the wrong side. And then we're going to fuse fleece to one of the pieces. Now, normally, like if you're using two different fabrics, so let's say the top part of the tab closure, you're using one kind of fabric, and then for the underside of the tab, you decided to use a different print. I prefer to put the fleece on the one that's underneath where we're going to be sewing the Velcro. And so you want it to be on this piece. The reason why is because when you're sewing the Velcro on, if you add fleece to that piece, it just gives more structure to where the Velcro is sewn on, and it'll make it a bit stronger. If you just, my worry is if you just sew it to interfaced fabric, like that just has woven interfacing, then the constant opening and closing will just eventually cause the stitching to come off or weaken the fabric where you've sewn on the Velcro. So this is just a precaution. Now, if you want, you can trim the seam allowance for this piece, but I feel like it's not that thick where it would need it. So I'm just going to put that on one of the pieces and fuse it in place. Okay, and then we can set those aside. And so that's it for this part. I'm just going to finish my exterior pieces, my main body piece, and I'm going to zigzag stitch all of my foam interpieces to the to the exterior pieces. They're matching exterior pieces, and then we're going to be able to get started on the exterior assembly of our bag.